Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Wanderlust Wednesdays. My name is Joost Ouendag. I will be talking about the Greek Odyssey, an 11-day program primarily in Greece. There's a little bit of Turkey in it, and we'll get right into it. We'll dive right into it. Normally, we have a little video that we start off with. This time, we're just doing it a little differently. We're mixing it up a little bit, and I'm being joined at the end of the presentation by Leah da Silva Muller, who is my right hand in all things that have to do with our shore excursion program. And she probably has a lot more answers than I do. So let's get right into it. The Greek Odyssey, as I said, it's an 11-day journey that starts and ends in Athens. And if we have a look at and we start off with, yes, just the rundown of the itinerary. We start with 2 nights in Athens. We then follow up. The next stop finds us in Volos in Greece. And each of these little towns we'll talk about a little bit more into detail. We then go to Thessaloniki. And those are ports that we don't always visit that much during the high season. We'll get to that in a minute. We then have a scenic cruising day that takes us past Mount Athos, which is a mysterious mountain that is dotted with monasteries that are very difficult to get to. We then land in Kushadasi, and there we visit the ancient city of Ephesus. Before we continue on to Rhodes, which is part of Greece, an island that sits a little below Turkey. Then we follow to Crete, and we end up via Santorini back in Athens. So that's in a nutshell. I'm sorry, Santorini is, of course, before Greece, before Crete. And then we go to Nafplio before we get into Athens. So that is in a nutshell what we do. When do we do this? We do this in quiet season. This is in the winter months, and that is primarily because Greece is a perfect country to visit when it's a little cooler. It's in the 60s. You will need to bring an umbrella. You will need to bring a windbreaker. You do need to have something to keep you, when the weather is a little inclement. It never gets really all that cold. And the great thing is this is a place in the world where if you're here in summer, and even if that is just let's say in June or even in September, it's hot. July and August are the hottest months, but even in shoulder season, Greece gets a little hot. So this is why this is an ideal time to do it. You will also just find fewer crowds. And in particular in Athens, that's a great thing. So let's dive right into it. And we will start that's a good one. We will start first with the extensions. That's before we get going with the itinerary itself. You can do two things, and they both focus on Athens. One is you travel halfway around the world to get to Greece. You may just want to catch your breath, spend a day exploring Athens. Athens is a city that you could spend a week in, but certainly an extra day is not a luxury. And so those 2 nights extra give you a day and a half or so where you can do a lot of things in Athens on your own. It's the kind of extension that we like to do for people who just need to take a little bit of a breath after they fly halfway around the world, and that don't need a lot of activity right away. If, on the other hand, you are looking to do the Grand Athens, we have a program that's 4 nights. And that is a program that takes in a lot of Athens, a lot of also the surrounding area. What you need to do here is when this is an extension that you book, you need to carefully look at the shore excursions that you can do on the cruise, because there's a bit of an overlap. Greece is not that large of a country. There's an awful lot to see, so you will not be bored if you spend 4 nights before you start cruising. But it's good to just understand what you've already done. So now then, let's delve right into it, and we will start in Athens. And in Athens, of course, you're looking at Piraeus more than Athens itself. Piraeus is the old port. It's not a big drive, but it's actually kind of fun to drive into the city and get a sense. You will pass a number of sites that are kind of interesting, that are scenic. The little port of Piraeus is actually quite nice. It's very crowded, but it gives you already a bit of a taste of what Athens itself will be like. And in Athens, of course, there's a number of incredible highlights. There's also just the feel of the city itself. Let's start with our included shore excursion, which covers a panoramic overview of the city. You'll see the Greek Parliament, and a minute ago you saw these men. Those are the guards for the tomb of the unknown soldier that are really interesting to look at. These costumes, I should call them uniforms, but they look more a little bit like costumes with the red pom-poms on the shoes. That is a sight to behold. It's right next to the Greek Parliament, which, if you think about it, the building itself is not that old. It's a former royal castle, but of course the Greek Parliament is one of the oldest institutions in the world. You will see the Panathenaic Stadium, which is where the new Olympic Games started in the early 20th century. And then we will take you to the museum. We will take you to the Archaeological Museum, which is kind of the national museum of Greece, to get a sense of thousands of years of history. You will see the Acropolis, but it's not part of the included tour. And that is simply because the Acropolis itself is not for everyone, depending on how fit you are, depending on the temperature. It's something where you do need to navigate some steps. You do need to navigate some uneven terrain. Obviously, if this is something that you can physically do, you absolutely have to do it because it's spectacular. My personal favorite would be to do both the Acropolis and the new Acropolis Museum, which kind of has the best of all of the Acropolis in it. It's a brand spanking new museum. It's set up very generously. It has a kind of a replica of what the Parthenon looks like, with the marbles that are the elegant marbles that it's a model, if you will, and it shows you exactly where these marbles were. So my favorite in Athens would be to do the whole thing, to do both the new museum and the Acropolis itself. Having said that, there are quite a number of things that you can that you can combine when you visit Athens. I think we have in the neighborhood of 12 different shore excursions, and all of them mix and match various different bits and pieces of Athens. And you will find that this is something that we like to do here. This is the Plaka district, very quiet, strangely quiet, if you will, because Athens is somewhat of a brutal city when you think about it. The traffic is incredible. It's a very, very busy city. It's not just the car traffic. The streets are also full of people, and it's very lively. It's great fun. But the Plaka district is a little bit of an oasis. You don't have a sense that you're in one of Europe's largest cities when you walk the streets there. And we like to combine that area with the new Acropolis Museum, for instance. We also combine the new Acropolis Museum, as I said, with the Acropolis itself. Mix and match, find out what it is that you have energy for. What I just described is kind of a tour de force. That's a lot of walking. It's a lot of seeing, but you can take it all in. If you want something that is a little bit more relaxed, take something that features a little bit of food, a little bit of drink, and to give you a sense of what a little bit of drink could look like, let's watch a little video about the Greek national drink.
In the heart of Athens' colourful Plaka district lies a tasty treasure. Bretos, the oldest distillery in Greece and second oldest in Europe. What was once an Athenian mansion is now filled to the rafters with homemade spirits.
So this very special bar has been here for a long time?
Yes, the bar is since 1909, 107 years. He started, Mr. Bretos, fixing in the backyard of the store ouzo and a spirit.
Greek spirits particularly?
Greek spirit, yes, Greek spirit.
Bretos is home to a delightful collection of intriguing spirits, brought to life from old family recipes, tastes found nowhere else.
We make our own ouzo. We make 40 different flavors of liqueurs and a couple of local things. One is chipuro, which is like a vodka, like a grappa, from the raisins, from the grapes. And we make rakomelo, which is raki with the cinnamon and honey. But our raki is without anise, chipoudia. Raki in Turkey is with anise.
So your raki does not taste like licorice?
Exactly.
Another option is a local's favourite, with an unusual taste derived from mastic trees on the Isle of Chios.
This is a bottle of pure mastica?
Yes. This is the tree with the sugar and alcohol.
Okay. And what does mastica itself taste like?
It's a very unique flavor. I have to give you a little bit to taste it, and you tell me about that.
Okay.
This is sweet thing, huh?
Sweet, yeah. I like sweets.
Go ahead.
That's unique.
It's unique flavor. That.
Little bit like the forest.
The forest, yes.
Like the trees.
The Greeks, they love mastica. The 99%.
In Norway, we have a drink called aquavit. Aquavit.
I heard about it. I know the aqua.
The water of life. So this is sort of the Greek aquavit.
Aquavit, yes. Aquavit.
Of course, there's one Greek spirit we simply had to check out, the Bretos' version of ouzo.
Where does that name come from?
I don't know what it means.
I don't know what
really,
it means.
really, I don't know what it means, but I can tell you how we make ouzo.
And how do you make it?
Yes. The ouzo is the spirit, which comes from sugar beets, the anise, and by the law, mastica. Have you tried ouzo before?
I love ouzo.
You love ouzo?
Because I love licorice.
If you love licorice, this you like more than all the other licorice you had.
It's liquid licorice.
Licorice. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, that's very smooth. And this is 48 proof?
Yes.
It's distilled and it's double distilled.
And three and four, yes.
And this particular one, which is the 48%, has been distilled how many times?
4 times.
4 times.
Yes.
That's the highest number of distillation.
We'll have 46% 3 times, 42% 2 times, and the blue one, which is 40% 1 time.
Does any of them taste more of licorice than others?
Yes, of course. The 40% more licorice, less. As more distilled, less you feel the licorice.
So if you're like me and you love licorice,
if you love licorice, you go to the 40%.
How are you supposed to drink ouzo? You're not supposed to.
No, sip it.
You're supposed to sip it.
Not shoot it.
Does it have any health benefits, or is it just makes you happy?
It makes you happy. That's all.
Pavlos had yet one more favourite to share, his handmade brandies that are served in a most unusual way.
If the customers want to have a drink, we take it straight from here.
Into the glass?
Into the glass, and we serve it. This is fantastic.
So from the barrel?
For the barrel, yes.
To the table?
To the table.
Bretos' timeless setting speaks volumes about the character of its delightful owner. Combine that with the endless choices and the warm, welcoming Greek hospitality, and you've got a place I won't soon forget. I hope you too will do what I did and explore more of Greek culture for yourself.
Okay, and then we have some things in Athens to do that take you a little further afield. Not that much, but a little further afield. This one, and you see this slide with, that is indeed Lord Nelson. And the ship on the right-hand side is what's called a trireme. It's called trireme because it has 3 rows of rowers. This is an ancient Greek battleship. And we combine these two, and that may sound a little strange, but there's a small foundation not far from where the ship docks that focuses on naval heritage and naval history. And we have a really good relationship with that foundation that allows us a little bit of privileged access to the collection that they have of Horatio Nelson's letters, clippings, all kinds of documentation that chronicles the life of Admiral Nelson. And then a little further down from where this foundation is, with its libraries, we show you this replica of this Greek ship, and we blend the whole thing into something that focuses on naval history and naval heritage. Another option is to go a little further afield to Delhi and find out what the Oracle has to tell you. Of course, Delhi is known as the place of the Temple of Apollo, along with a very well preserved theater, and then a stadium that sits kind of on the hill overlooking the Temple of Apollo. And Delhi was where people would go to have the oracle explain to them what was in their future. And they believe that maybe the oracle itself, the person that sat there and did all this predicting, sat on a crack in the earth crust through which fumes came up that at least gave her a mysterious aura, but may have even broadened her mind a little bit to a point where she could do all these predictions. Not exactly known how that works. There is a nearby archaeological museum that has a lot of what they found in the immediate area. Of course, much of Greece is dotted with these archaeological museums, and they're usually quite good. You don't need a ton of time to just get a sense of that particular place. The best thing in that museum is the Charioteer of Delhi, which is a bronze that is just absolutely incredible to behold. Okay, and then we move on. From Athens, we then end up in Volos. Volos is a major port in the province of Thessaly, and what you will find there is a blend of beautiful nature, as you can see here, and the hillsides are all dotted with these little villages. It was so beautiful during ancient times that the region was referred to as the playground of the gods. They were, there was an imagination that this is where the gods would go on vacation, if you will. And now you get to go there. The included excursion that we do there focuses on these traditional Greek villages. It also takes you to an archaeological museum in the area, because this is an area where they found civilizations that predate what we consider classical Greece by another 2,000 years. And that blend of today's very laid back traditional culture and 6,000 years of history, or actually it's 8,000 years of history, because it's 6,000 years before the Common Era. 8,000 years of history. It makes for a very interesting combination of things to enjoy, and it's really something that you have to go to Greece for to experience. There are some other ancient civilizations, but in Europe, clearly this is the place to go if that's the kind of experience you like. It is also Volos. You're not far from the Meteora monasteries. Imagine this plain. This is a perfect picture. Imagine this flat plain and then hills rising from that plain, and those hills turn into cliffs. And in the 14th century, Greek monks thought that those places were perfect. Now, they were perfect in many different ways. They were perfect in, they were very easy to defend, obviously, and medieval, we're talking in the 14th century, medieval times were dangerous at times, and to have a place where you could defend yourself was always a good thing. There was also a spiritual dimension to this, to have this view over the world below you gave you a sense that you were closer to the heavens and therefore closer to God. And that made these places just perfect for these monasteries. There are quite a few of them. Not all of them as spectacular as the one that you see here, but they are certainly worth a visit, a very spiritual visit. And then finally, Volos is also not that far from that quintessential Greek site, Mount Olympus. And this is where the temple of Zeus was. Sadly, all that's left are the ruins, but this is where the gods lived. And to get a sense of what used to be there, it's perfect to just wander around the ruins. You have time to do this, to wander around the ruins and get a sense of the place. And then Mount Olympus is basically in the background. Wherever you look, you'll find that magnificent mountain. Here again, you'll have a small archaeological museum that provides context and gives you a sense of what used to be there rather than just what is there today. On your way back, we will stop at the little village of Litochoro, where we will have lunch. And I mentioned that before. I'll stress it again. The idea here is that in these little villages, there's no better way to experience the local life than to just have a simple meal. And what you always end up with, wherever you go in Greece, are very fresh ingredients. The meals tend to be relatively simple, but really good because the climate is such that you have great tomatoes, that you have great cucumbers, that you have great veggies in general. Virtually everything gets a little dollop of feta cheese, obviously. And it's just a splendid way to watch the world go by a little bit as you sit there and enjoy a Greek meal. Cannot recommend that enough. The food on our ships is phenomenal, but you every once in a while just have to take a break and do something local. Okay, after Volos, the next stop is a large city. Actually, this is Greece's second largest city, Thessaloniki. And this is a mix of old and new. Thessaloniki was always a seaport, and therefore it attracted a lot of people from all kinds of parts of the world. It has always absorbed these cultural influences. There is obviously, it's an old city. It goes back to the Hellenistic period, so classic Greece. There are vestiges of Roman life. The Byzantine era left its marks. The Ottoman Empire left its marks. And obviously, it's a modern Greek city. It has a large archaeological museum that is worth a visit. The Acropolis itself, many large Greek cities have an Acropolis. Essentially what it is a hilltop. A hilltop usually dotted with temples for obvious reasons. Why not use the most prominent place in a particular area to build your temples? And that's the case here in Thessaloniki. It's more the views than it is the ruins and the Acropolis, the buildings, the structures themselves. From here, from Thessaloniki, you can travel to the royal tombs of Vergina, and there you get closer. This is another shot of Thessaloniki. It shows a little bit of the port. The royal tombs are, here they are. And if you look very carefully, you can make out a face behind those horses. That is Philip II. Philip II was the king of Macedonia, and Philip II's son, of course, was Alexander the Great. And Alexander the Great conquered the known world at the time, and this is why a visit to this part of Greece is so important. It was one of the first really large empires that started in Europe. It didn't last all that long. It started to crumble the moment Alexander died. But for quite a while, the known world, at least the eastern part of the known world, was all ruled from this area, from Macedonia. The Museum of the Royal Tombs has collected everything that is left, that has been carefully preserved after archaeological digs, and because the grave, you essentially one of the tombs is Philip's tomb, and the museum houses a lot of Philip's most important possessions. His ivory-plated armor, not just ivory, it's an ivory and gold armor. It's all the things that a king needs in the afterlife. Another optional excursion from here takes you to Pella, and Pella is the ancient capital of Macedonia. And this gives you an idea of what you will find there. The colonnades, the mosaics in particular, and that's always a little hard to show you in pictures like this. This gives you an overview, but mosaics in Pella are absolutely spectacular. There's one that I love. It's the stag hunt, and it is just incredibly it's incredibly lifelike. You can actually see the faces of these hunters thinking a stag is a dangerous animal with the antlers sprouting out of its head. You need to be somewhat careful. I always look at these two hunters and I think, you're a little scared of that animal, aren't you? Included in this visit is the town of Edessa, and the town itself is not much to look at, but the waterfalls that are just outside of town are quite spectacular. Lunch is in a local restaurant. The distances we cover are not that great when we do these excursions that take you a little further away from the port, but you have to keep in mind that the roads in Greece make for very slow travel, and there are hills. So, we like to not have you spend an awful lot of time in the bus and then rush you back to the ship for lunch. This is why, again, you find quite a few of the shore excursions that have lunches included. Next day, now you've had a few days of action-packed sightseeing, and this day is entirely reserved for just cruising along the Greek coast and cruising past Mount Athos. And in on the slopes of Mount Athos are these ancient Greek Orthodox monasteries that are where the monks still live in a way that hasn't been changed all that much over the centuries. It's still a little secretive. They still don't welcome visitors all that much. They really like to kind of stick with what it is that they're doing, and that is preserving, restoring the books that they have there, the liturgical art that they have there. But it's kind of a world unto itself. And you can imagine it as you travel by the holy mountain on your sea day. Okay, and then we travel across the Aegean Sea and we find ourselves in Turkey. And of course, modern Turkey is also a site of an awful lot of ruins from classical times. Troy is in Turkey, and so is Ephesus. And in Ephesus, certainly the most magnificent piece of architecture that you can see there is the Library of Celsus, that at one point housed 12,000 scrolls. Remember, this is in the days when scrolls were the ancient books. You would roll up your parchment in long rolls rather than put it in books, chop up the pages and bind them all. That's probably the most recognizable feature in all of Ephesus. The temples and the ruins themselves are part of the included excursion. Good footwear is really important here. This is what I said earlier. This is in any of these places, you need to be able to navigate things that are clearly not made for these centuries. They're 2,000, 3,000, sometimes 4,000 years old. And as such, they're not as accessible as some of the places as some of the modern places. Another great thing to try in Ephesus is to see the entire area from the air. And the planes that fly there, the fixed-wing planes, are close enough for you to see in great detail what unfolds itself below you. So it's a completely different way of getting a sense of the lay of the land. And then this is a perfect picture of a Medusa. This is an ancient temple, an ancient oracle temple. Oracles were dotted all over ancient Greece. It wasn't just the Oracle at Delphi. That was certainly the best known. And when Greece became a state, it was kind of the place to go, but there were other oracles as well. And the artworks surrounding these oracles, obviously these were places that had money, because anytime you went to visit an oracle, you had to pay a little bit of money. And the temples that surrounded these oracles were usually quite spectacular. So this is a beautiful Medusa head. After this is the library of Celsus. And you can see this is just an incredible building. This is, in my mind, this is kind of why you go to Ephesus. Kushadasi, if you will. That's the Turkish name of the port that we visit today. And again, this is an optional excursion simply because we don't believe that everyone can navigate these ruins the way that you would want to. It's something that we, and we advise you about these things. You have to kind of, as you pick your shore excursions, make sure that you know what you're getting yourself into, if you will. We talked about the flight scene. James, there's a picture, I think. Yeah, this just shows you, this is just a picture of Kushadasi. It doesn't exactly show you what I actually suspect that this is a shot from a hilltop, but it gives you a sense of, what the city and what the place looks like from the air. After Kushadasi, we keep on sailing, and we will find ourselves in Rhodes, the island of knights. And Rhodes has millennia of history, but is probably best known as a place of the Grand Masters. The Knights Templar occupied Rhodes. This is a shot of the castle, the Palace of the Grand Masters, and it looks more like a fortress than anything else. You can call it a palace, but the Knights Templar were people that were in the Eastern Mediterranean to protect the holy sites in what's now Israel from the Saracens, from the heathens that tried to conquer Jerusalem. So it was this odd combination of a religious order that also knew how to wield a sword quite well, and therefore the Grand Palace looks more like a fortress than anything else. You will get a sense of what the town looks like the town around the palace looks like as you go on your included shore excursion. You'll have beautiful views. Once you make it up that hill, the views over the entire surrounding area are quite spectacular. We have a few optional excursions as well that focus more specifically on the palace, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And this allows you to go inside, to also have a sense of what the town of Linda surrounding it is like. And finally, you do end up also with a walking tour of Rhodes. Again, we want you to also experience the culture, the local culture, of which Rhodes has it by the spoonful. In this case, you will get spoonsful of Greek delicacies. You'll learn about carpet making, about pottery, and this is all in a village called Archangelos. It's essentially a town that has completely dedicated itself to keeping ancient traditions alive. You see this view and you may think it's a little overdone, but keep in mind that this is kind of a cultural repository, if you will, in a rapidly changing world. Another optional excursion takes you to the Acropolis of Lindus. Again, this is always a combination of ancient Greek architecture and splendid views. The ancient Greeks really knew where to place their temples, and you'll have a hard time deciding what's more beautiful, the views over the sea or the temples themselves. This is a Doric temple dedicated to Athena, and it's actually sits within the castle of the knights. It also takes you, this excursion takes you to the Byzantine Church of St. John, and these Byzantine churches are incredibly colorful on the inside. In this case, mosaics were if you will, the preferred way of artistic expression in Byzantine churches. This one is a little unique in that it has frescoes. It has paintings on the inside. After we're done in Rhodes, we sail on and we will find ourselves in Santorini. And what you have to imagine, Santorini, and you all see these cliffs. This is actually a really good picture because it shows you a village on this very, very steep cliff, and in the background you see more steep cliffs. Santorini is an island that is part of what's called a caldera, and our ships will sit in the middle of that caldera, and we will tender you to shore. Because the sides of these islands are incredibly steep. You will get up there with a cable car. We used to, or visitors used to do this on donkeys, and that's not such a good idea anymore. It's not nice to donkeys, really. We bring you up to the villages of Santorini, and the best thing there, we do a guided tour, but the best things there are just to walk these streets. It's as picturesque and as postcard-like as you can imagine it, to just walk around. For every corner, you'll be thinking, oh, here's another blue roof on a white building, and blue waters in the background. And you can actually, it's a very cool place to take pictures of your ship, because you'll look down onto the ship that sits in this caldera. A caldera is basically what's left after a tremendous volcanic eruption. And in this case, the mountain that used to be there, imagine this gargantuan volcano. What you see today and what Santorini is just a little bit of what's left over of that volcano after it blew its top and the sea invaded the center of the volcano. So the ship sits in the center of the volcano, if you like, and Santorini is one of the sides of the volcano. You can actually, one of the excursions that you can do, you travel to a marina and you board a private catamaran, and the crew will take you around. They will serve some appetizers. There's the catamaran right there. Thanks, James. You can get a sense of what this is like. You can cruise this caldera in a very leisurely way. You will see these little sandy beaches that are here and there. There are not very many of them, and they're relatively small, but they're very cute and very, they look very romantic. You'll get some local tidbits. You'll get some local wines to get a sense of the flavors of Santorini. Speaking of which, you can also do an excursion that focuses only on that. It's called the Flavors of Santorini, and that you will do in one of the houses that overlooks the caldera. And there you'll have Santorini wines. The winery there is called Cavallis, and he will invite you into his canava. And his canava is basically his cave. It's the vineyard. It's a winery itself. You'll have a few glasses of various different wines, and with that, you'll have little Greek tidbits. And that doesn't sound like you'll have a meal, but you'll have a complete meal. You'll be ready for a nap afterwards. And then finally, in Santorini, we also offer a home visit, where you get to see one of these beautiful, incredibly picturesque houses from the inside, and you can find out all kinds of things about the families that live there. You meet with locals. They can tell you what life is like on the island. It's an interesting life, because you'll be there in the off season, and I'm sure that some of these people will tell you stories of what it could be like when it's really busy. You will also have some time to explore nearby Thera, and that's the capital of the island. And again, none of these little towns on the islands have spectacular buildings or church. They have small churches, but it's all very much on a human scale. The beauty in all of these places is just to walk the streets and to see the houses and see how much pride people take in making, in creating these postcards. If you have a house that isn't a postcard, you want to keep your house up, and that's, I think, one of the best things about the island. The villages, by the way, those thick walls, they're also quite, if you will, quite ecologically advanced. The houses stay cool in summer. They don't need an awful lot of heating in winter. They're very well built. very ancient, but very well built for the seasons. Okay, so then from Santorini, we keep cruising on, and we will find ourselves in Suda Bay on Crete. And Suda Bay has always been a very important port that goes back all the way to antiquity again. It has a great natural harbor. It's located on trade routes of the Eastern Mediterranean, and it has a beautiful setting. You can see this in this image. If this image would zoom out a little bit more, you would see the mountains behind the city. It is quite a sight to see just from the ship even. The Crete is, of course, best known for the ancient civilization of the Minoans and King Minos, who built the Palace of Knossos. And I always love the legend that is connected to that. It's the legend of the Minotaur, the half man, half bull, that lived in a labyrinth not far from the temple. And it was kind of an evil monster, because on a fairly regular basis, they brought young men and women from Athens who were sacrificed to the Minotaur, who would devour them. And then there's the beautiful story of the young strapping Athenian named Theseus, who was so strapping, in fact, that the daughter of the king of King Minos fell in love with him, made him a huge ball of twine, which you may think is, for a man who's walking to his death, is not the greatest gift in the world. But in fact, it was, because the ball of twine allowed Theseus to find his way back. So he did not get lost in the labyrinth, as most of these hapless young Athenians did, and then get devoured by the Minotaur. He actually slew the Minotaur and managed to find his way back. Sadly, the love between Theseus and Ariadne did not last. But that's a different story. It's not that plays out in Athens and not in Crete. In Crete, again, we have an excursion that focuses on food and drink. In this case, olive oil is so important in all of Greece, but certainly also on Crete. And we will bring you to a place that is what we like to call a working world type of a setting. We have excursions that focus on how do people make a living. And this is one of them. How does a modern olive mill work? How is olive oil produced? How is it pressed out of the olives? What do you need to look for? And so on and so forth. And Terra Creta is a state-of-the-art factory that does just that. So it's not a romantic, idealized version of how you make olive oil. It shows you how this is done for a world market for olive oil and for the 21st century. After that, of course, you do an olive oil tasting to get a sense of the various different kinds of olive oil that are produced there. And after that, you go to the Dorakis winery to sample some Greek wines. And not surprisingly, those go along with some snacks. Finally, there is an excursion that takes you to Aptera. And this is a large archaeological site. Aptera itself is a beautiful little town. There's a fairly large area of archaeological remains, but there's also just this little town that is quite, and this shows you what the ruins look like. The town itself is also quite charming. It has seen Byzantine rule, it has seen Venetian rule, and a lot of that is left in a town that's cute as a button, really, if I may be a little flippant. From here, we move on to Nafplio. That's the next port. And Nafplio itself has you can see it here, it has a beautiful old town. This is one of those places we will take you on a guided walk. And then maybe for that day, you just want to keep walking in the town because it's relatively small. You cannot really get lost. It's relatively, it's easy to find your way around the ship is never far away. So maybe that's what you want to do. We have a number of other things that you can do. You're not far from the Peloponnese, which is this, what do you call it? It's the peninsula that you find a lot of ancient cities, ancient vestiges of ancient civilizations that we cover on a full day shore excursion. This, by the way, is something that you also do on that extension that I spoke about earlier, that longer extension. So if you book that extension, what you want to do is not this, but instead, if you want to get out of town, maybe visit the Corinth Canal. And you've seen pictures of this, I'm sure. It cuts the Peloponnese Peninsula in half. It's a waterway that just makes navigation around the Greek Isles so much easier. And it was built in the early 20th century. It's very narrow, and you can look at it from top down into this man-made abyss where you will see large freighters going back and forth. It's the steepest rock walls you've ever seen, and it must be quite a feat it must be quite a trip to go through it on a freighter. You also visit a local winery after the Corinth Canal. The historic sites. Oh, here's the canal. Oh, beautiful, James. Thank you. This gives you a sense of what the ships need to go through the canal with a tugboat. You can see that here. It's obviously for today. It's for not for the biggest of ships, because it's by now 100 years old, but it's still quite an engineering feat. Finally, the excursion to Messina and Epidaurus and the Palamidi Fortress. This is the Palamidi Fortress. So you start off in Nafplio itself, but you spend the day traveling from one ancient site to another on this excursion. Lunch is included here again before you return to the ship. And then we're done. We're going back to Athens, but before we are completely done and move into this, by the way, is Temple of Apollo the Temple of Zeus in Athens. But before we're completely done and go into your questions, we have a little video that we would like to share. Very romantic, sad, tragic story.
Strolling through the magnificent Acropolis, I learned of the modern-day love story of Mary and Mimikos, a romantic tragedy that became a movie chronicling the dramatic events of 1893.
Mary Weber was a German governess at the palace of King George I of Greece.
She met an army surgeon,
Michael Mimikos.
They met somehow during a Sunday promenade and they fell in love.
It must have been a love at first sight.
The two lovers met every day on the Acropolis of Athens.
This was their standard rendezvous.
It's one of those loves that you all know, like Juliet and Romeo.
They did things discreetly because, you know, it wasn't very proper for a young girl to be having an affair. They used to communicate with letters. She would leave it at the military hospital, which was just next to the Acropolis Museum, so that he would receive it.
Sending letters one to the other, forever, promising things, waiting for them to get married, waiting for them to live the rest of their life.
The love affair went on for 7 months, and they started making plans to see if they could be married, if they would have enough money to make it through.
One day, Mimikos did not come, and the following day, he did not show up.
Michael Mimikos is missing those morning rendezvous every single day for 3 running days.
He disappears. Mary sends one letter, the second letter, the third letter, no response.
And this happened for 8 running days.
Finally, she writes a brief note.
She's absolutely desperate. She wants to meet him, and now it's the 4th letter coming saying,
"If you don't come, I kill myself." And she meant it.
The next morning, she's coming up with great hope. She started picking up and collecting flowers from all around the rocky hill.
And in that white gown in which she was dressed, she went all the way up.
All the way up to the very top of the Parthenon.
And she stood there, and the guard, who was an eyewitness, said that she looked like a statue, a living statue in that dress that was blown by the air.
And when she knew that he was not coming, she just leapt.
Some tourists that happened to be nearby helped her to transfer her body to the nearby hospital. This hospital at the foot of the Acropolis, where Mimikos was a staff member.
Her love arrived, Michael, only to find out all the letters that had piled up there. And he had not read them, he had not received them, only because he was sick all these days. He was absent for 8 days in a row.
He was guided to the room. There he found his Mary holding violets, dressed as a bride. That was the custom in Greece, still is, when unmarried people die.
That moment, he said, "Do not worry, I'll follow you soon."
The next thing we know is that his family took him to their house. His brother decided to stay with him so that he wouldn't commit suicide, but at some point in the night,
He took his gun and he shot himself.
straight into the heart.
That next day, the funerals took place. There were separate burials, but on that same night of the funerals, a group of doctors, friends actually, they entered the cemetery and moved the body of Mimikos into Mary's grave.
Their names are engraved on the grave stone and on the grave marker, and it is a very sweet, modest place.
Mimikos and Mary were as pure as angels, and like angels, they flew to heaven.
I hope you too will do what I did and explore the Acropolis, listening closely for the other stories these stones can tell.
Okay, that was it. We're now ready for your questions. Leah has just joined me, and fire away.
Thank you, Joost. Our first question tonight comes from Thomas. He's in Massachusetts in the United States, and he asks, which excursion would you recommend in Athens? He says, I'm interested in archaeology and keen to learn as much as possible about ancient Greece during my time in the city.
If you're interested in, do the big thing, do the Acropolis and do the museum. And that's it's a tour de force, but that's what you need. If you're interested, then that's what we do. Leah, I don't know if you see this any differently, but that's a no-brainer in my mind.
Yeah, I agree that is the thing to do if you're interested. You would do the Acropolis and then the New Acropolis Museum. The archaeological museum is also very good, but the New Acropolis Museum is the highlight.
Yeah. See if you can squeeze in the archaeological museum, and then you're. Last time I was there, we did it all, and it was really tiring, but it was. Then it's good. It's good.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Question here from Tracy in San Diego, and she says, will we have the opportunity to see one of those famous sunsets in Santorini?
Famous what? Sorry?
Sunsets.
Depends on when the ship leaves, and that's a little variable. So we cannot make any promises there. To get to Santorini and to leave Santorini, in both cases you travel quite a distance, and so it always depends on exactly when you're there and when we need to depart. So it's not something we can guarantee. In season, obviously, in the quiet season, you have a better chance. But Leah, I'm not so sure. What do you think?
It will depend on the departure for the sailing. We do sail a little bit later during the quiet season, so there is a higher chance of catching one of those famed sunsets. But again, it's something that we can't guarantee.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you both. Lincoln in Missouri asks, what sort of temperatures can we expect in the winter months in Greece? Will we still see blue skies? Yes.
60s. low to mid 60s, and then you will still have your blue skies, but there's more chance that every once in a while it'll be a little overcast and you might actually catch some rain. But overall, this is not a place. You're not in Holland. I can say that because I'm Dutch.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. Question here from Avis in St. Clair in the United States, and he says, I've heard very good things about the village of Lindos on Rhodes, but I'm also keen to see the Grand Palace. What would you recommend?
You might have time to do a little bit of both. Do the Grand Palace and then a short excursion, and then explore the city a little bit on your the village itself a little bit on your own. That's what I would do. What do you think, Leah?
Yes. We have a very good option to do Lindos and the Grandmaster's Palace. So that
combines it. Yeah.
It's a full day. It's going to be a little tiring, but it's completely worth it, of course.
Good. Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. And slightly linked to that, Robert in New Bern in the United States says, for the shore excursions in these wonderful ports, is it possible to take a ship is it possible to take the included tour but not return to the ship with the group and come back on your own by public transport?
Yeah, if you so choose, then certainly. And that, depending on where you are, that may be a little bit more adventurous or a little less adventurous, but absolutely. And the ship staff is there to help you navigate this. The local guides can also help you with this. Yeah, no, do that. Do that. If that's how you roll, yeah, no, we would encourage that. You have to think of all of this as we bring you somewhere. We have a program. We understand that most of our guests want to have us, kind of prepare for them and set it all up and do guided sightseeing. And there are some people who think that, after a while, they just want to strike out on their own. And we're also there to help you do that.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. We have Chuck in Toronto, Canada, who says, on the Meteora excursion, do we get the opportunity to climb up to the monastery? And if so, which one can we visit?
Leah, do you know off the top of your head which monasteries we visit? And the climbing, I'm not so certain about.
So we visit two of the monasteries. One of the very first monasteries doesn't involve a climb. It's very accessible, exactly to make sure that we can cater to as many of our guests as possible. We do not visit the steepest one of them all, which involves 140 steps. But you do get to get a very nice view of the valley. So it's a good experience for sure.
Okay.
Wonderful. Thank you, Leah. And another question here about climbing. So Sheila in the United States says, for those who do not want to climb the 80 steps up to the Acropolis, do you know of another high vantage point around the city where you can get a good view of it?
There are other vantage points, and don't we go to one of them during the city tour where you have a bit of a view? Yes. Yeah. There's always a little bit of danger because Athens sits in this valley, and it can be, if you have any clouds, they'll sit there for a day. So then, your views aren't that great. If, however, it's clear and you have a better chance when it's a little cold, then the views are splendid. And we do, like I said, we do take you to a viewpoint on the city tour itself. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Question here from Adrienne. She's in Mojave Valley in the United States. And she says, can you tell us how crowded some of the popular spots such as Santorini and Ephesus can get? And when is the best time to go for a quieter experience?
This itinerary. This takes place in off season. So it's ideal. Greece tends to be, it's a destination that is probably from late April to late September it can be quite crowded, and that goes for your typical popular destinations. If that's very high on your list, that whatever you do, you don't want to travel when there's a lot of other people afoot, and you have great discretion as to when you travel. I mean, a lot of people can't, just decide in mid-November that they want to go somewhere. If you can plan it that way, I would do this rather than go to Greece any other time, unless you really, really like the heat.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. Question here from Kathleen in Corvallis in the United States, and she says, we're on another Viking itinerary that starts in Athens. I'm wondering, do any of Viking's tours include the botanical gardens, which I understand have been beautifully renovated?
Leah, do you know? I think you can go there on your own, but we don't do it in a shore excursion, do we?
We don't include it, no. But it's something that I'll look into now.
Okay. But I think it's not that difficult to get to.
No, and we make it very easy to explore Athens, even if it's something that we don't include in our program. We offer, of course, a wide array of shore excursions. And then we also offer a shuttle service that will transport you to the city center. It makes it very easy to get around. If you have specific interests that you want to look into, we make it very easy for you to get to those if it's not something that we include in our program.
Good. Yeah.
So we have Elaine in the United States who asks, do any of your Crete tours go to the Archaeological Museum in Heraklion?
No, I don't believe so. Leah, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so.
Heraklion is not featured in this specific itinerary, but in the itineraries that we do feature, we do visit the Archaeological Museum. It's actually part of our included short excursion.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you both. We have a couple of people. So we have Kathy and we also have Rich, who are both asking about swimming. So is it possible to swim from any of the islands in the Aegean Sea?
That is one thing I would probably not do in quiet season. Unless you bring a wetsuit. Now I think it's a little too cool for that. That's something that is much better in May, June, September, not so much on this itinerary.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. We have Susan in Canada. She'd just like to ask, do we still need to be vaccinated?
In Greece, I believe right now you still need to be vaccinated. With this, I mean, the great thing is you no longer need, you don't need a COVID test anymore to get on a plane. So life is a lot easier. But depending on when you travel, I would always check. Call Viking, call your travel agent, make sure that you know, because these things tend to change. And with, if COVID taught us anything over the last 2 years, it's things sometimes change without a lot of notice. So I think that's just, part of travel these days is that you need to, I would be loath to tell you right now that you're okay. And then come February next year or so, you're going to find out that things have changed. So check this. And we can always tell you, Viking can always tell you, and your travel agent can always tell you exactly what it is that you need when you travel.
Thank you, Joost. Sonia now in Naples in the United States asks, generally, how much walking is required to enjoy most of the excursions on this cruise?
You can pace yourself. Leah? You can just,
In most of the places, there are options, of course. Some walking is required if you want to partake in a Viking activity. But the guides will go as slow as necessary, depending on the ability of the group, depending on the weather, of course. So the paths are always tailored to the conditions of the day. And then you can just, if you feel that they're going a little too fast, where you can pace yourself, take a seat, enjoy a little bit of a coffee in a street cafe. And then we, of course, utilize our quiet boxes throughout all activities. So it's easier to keep in contact with the group, even if you're a little bit further away. And apart from Athens, most of these places are small, and it will be always easier to rejoin the ship or rejoin your group, even if you stay a little bit behind.
And we do have on our shore excursions, we mark what's what's easy, what is, if you will, a little bit more difficult, and what's demanding. So you'll have a sense there as well.
Perfect. Thank you both. Next question here is from Warren. He's in San Antonio in the United States, and he says, do you have local musicians and dancers on your ship? And how about the menu? Are there local items available every day?
Yes on both. Essentially, and I cannot tell you right now, if you're traveling in half a year from now, what those local musicians will be like. But yes, we always make sure that what you experience on the ship enriches what you do on shore. That's the whole idea of, having lectures, having local entertainment, having a taste of local food. We absolutely, everything on the ship is to help you prepare and to help you, kind of relive what you did on shore. Absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you. June in Omaha in the United States says, we're traveling to Santorini in December. Will most of the shops and restaurants be open?
You'll probably have a few places that will be closed. It's not like it's dead. Any of these places that you go to will have the majority of shops and restaurants open. But there will be a few places that will fold for the season, I think. Leah?
Yes, mostly you will find reduced opening times. Of course, during the summertime, the days are much longer. You will find that stores and restaurants are open from, say, 7 o'clock in the morning until maybe 9-10 p.m. in the evening. During the winter, the times are reduced. Some of the venues that are less sought after, they will close for the season. But in the bigger cities, Theta, for example, Oya, you will have a lot of options for sourcing souvenirs or go out for a meal, of course.
Perfect. Thank you. A couple of questions here about Ephesus now. So Brenna in Houston says, will the included tour of Ephesus let us see the famous library ruins?
Leah, I don't think it does, huh?
No. So for our included tour, we stay closer to the main entrance because the walk to the library is quite long. The pavement is quite uneven. It is a strenuous activity that we needed to differentiate so that our guests can book accordingly to their capabilities. Mm-hmm. But there is the option to see it, of course.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Leah. And then Sal in the United States says, can we take the Ephesus tour to Mary's house in the morning and then remain there and do the included tour in the afternoon?
Why not? I mean, it's something that you need to coordinate a little bit with the people on the ship, but yeah, I don't see why not. Leah, do you have anything against that?
I personally do not. It will all depend on how much time we are afforded in port for that day. Again, it's something that you would want. It's something that you can check already ahead of time, because in my Viking journey, you can check how much time we have in port and if you are able to book the 2 activities or not. If it's something that you're really set on doing and it's not allowing you pre-cruise, then I would advise you, once you get on board, you talk with the shore excursion team, the guest services team, and they try really hard to make anything happen for our guests on board. So if it's something that you can do, they will find a way.
Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. Nancy in the United States asks, do we get an early entrance to the Acropolis Museum in Athens when we take the full Acropolis optional excursion?
I don't know, do we? Yeah.
No, we fall within the regular hours because they do have quite an early opening time already. They usually open at 7 o'clock in the morning, so it wouldn't be needed to visit outside of the
and I
opening
think
hours.
you don't have to. Sorry, didn't mean to. I interrupted you. Sorry.
No worries.
No, I was going to say, you're on this one. You're traveling in off season, so you will not really have that problem so much. I did not find that museum all that crowded to begin with, and I think the last time I was there was it was hot. I don't remember exactly, but I think it was in May. So.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. Question here from Joanne on Pryor in Canada, and she says, can you tell us what's included for tours in the 4-day Athens post extension?
Yes, I have that here, but I if you don't mind, I will look at my little cheat sheet here. So you're going to Mycenae, Epidaurus, Delhi, where you see the oracle, and that's in Athens itself. So that's it. You have 3 included tours.
Perfect, thank you. And then Robin in Columbus asks, well, how much assistance can we expect from the Viking representative at the hotel in Athens ahead of arrival? Can we contact them to get ideas for excursions, restaurant recommendations and local tours?
Ahead of arrival, no. That is something, but the moment you walk in the door, they're going to be there, and they can help you set things up. Ahead of arrival is problematic because we have a number of people who play that role, and we may not know that much ahead of time who's going to be scheduled for that day. We have a core group of people that looks after our guests in Athens, but Petros still needs to assign them, and he does so, whenever he starts doing his weekly schedule. So that one's hard to do ahead of time. I don't believe that you necessarily need all that much advance. I think whatever it is that you want to do, you can arrange pretty much as you get in for the next day.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. Lots of questions coming in about weather. We could just recap. So we've got Nelson asking about the temperatures in December. We've got asking about temperatures end of October. So maybe we could just run through which are the best months for the mildest weather and what those particular months are like.
I would, if I had my pick, I would probably pick October over December, just because in December it gets a little colder. But it's, when you say mild in Greece, what that basically means is it's not so hot. There's nothing to do with, it's not so cold. If you will, the danger zone in Greece is more about it being too hot than it being too cold. So it's mildest in October, November, and then it gets a little nippy in December. So yeah, spend any time in Greece in January or in December?
In December, yes. Temperatures are still very mild. Of course, you still find a lot of European guests that decide to go to Greece for their winter vacation. So there must be something there. But temperatures, yes, like you mentioned, they are on the side of maybe being a little too hot than ever getting too cold.
Yeah.
Thank you. We have Martha in Austin who asks, do the tour guides use microphones to help us hear what's being said?
Yes. We have a system called Quiet Vox, and you have a little bud in your ear, and that's how you hear the guides. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. Jody in Baton Rouge says, what kind of talks and lectures could we expect to be on offer during this cruise?
So in general, what we try to do, we have what's called a resident historian who sets up with his lectures or her lecture sets up the framework in Greece, and in this case, they will talk about you will get, if you will, the basic foundation that you need to be able to understand what you're seeing on shore excursions. That's the whole point of a resident historian. And then we, for each cruise, we invite guest speakers, and they cover very much local history, local archaeology, quite often also current affairs, and all of that creates a fairly concise and comprehensive package of, you are forearmed, if you will, for your visits. That's the whole idea of the lecturers.
Perfect. Thank you, Joost. Question here from Karen in Rochester, United States, and she says, are there any typically Greek products that you would recommend shopping for to bring home with us?
I think you would need to check this, but I'm pretty sure that you can bring olive oil into the country, and that's, doesn't get much more Greek than olive oil. You can probably bring vacuum wrapped, I don't know. No, let's not go there. Let's not go with the nuts. Stick with the olive oil. Leah, what else? Ouzo.
Ouzo.
Yes.
Olives.
Yeah.
They do vacuum wrap it, so you can travel with it. Pistachio is also very famous.
Yeah.
Very popular. I think anything to do with ceramic is also very popular for Greece.
Yes.
So there's a lot of options.
Yes. And you should actually be fine with the pistachios. They're not going to be on the Department of Agriculture list.
Perfect. Thank you. And then I guess linked to that, Robin in Columbus would like to know about currency. Are US dollars accepted? And if so, how much currency should we carry? And can we use our credit cards in Greece?
Use your credit cards, bring an ATM card so that you can get euros. Don't bring dollars. In general, you're basically taking a crapshoot. People might go, okay, we'll just charge you an excellent exchange rate, but it's not a currency in Europe. So you would need to bring your ATM and bring your credit card. You don't go. I would not go and change an awful lot of cash. You're not really going to need it.
Perfect. Thank you. We have Brendan here in Littleton, Colorado, who says, any recommendations for the best Greek food to try?
You go first, Leah.
Where to start? Greek salad, of course. It's well known, but there is something about having a salad with fresh tomatoes, the fresh feta cheese, the kalamata olives, the cucumbers. And then if you're lucky enough, they serve that on the side with a beautiful lamb chop, and that is very tasty. And of course, you're by the sea, so there's a lot of fish options as well. And there's just so many options.
And bread. Nice.
Bread and olive oil.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm going for Greek salad as well, Heather. I'm sorry. That's, we are completely in agreement here. So Greek salad it is. That sounds boring, but it's just do that. Really, be surprised.
Perfect. Thank you both. And then just a couple of quick questions to end with. So we do have a few people traveling October this year, and they're just wondering, will there be more availability added for shore excursions for these upcoming departures? Because they've noticed a few things are already sold out.
Yeah, well, there.
We monitor availability on a weekly basis, and we add space wherever and when possible. And it's, of course, something that we continuously monitor. So I would say check back. We try to add space as often as possible.
Yeah. And if there's anything that you really have your heart set on and you can't book it beforehand, ask on the ship. People change their minds quite a bit. That's kind of a function of depending on where you are in the cruise. You literally will have seats that open up the night before sometimes, depending on the kind of excursion that you're looking at. Just because people think, okay, well, I'm going to take it easy tomorrow, or I want to do something a little different than I thought I was going to do. But yeah, we do, like Leah said, we do monitor these on a regular basis, and add space, add inventory where we can. Yeah.
And something to keep in mind as well, not so much during the winter season, but also during that time, we are import with other vessels, and of course, the closer we get to the date, the other vessels also start releasing space, so we can add more when it comes available, and that usually happens on the 7 days prior to the dates. So it's always worth if you didn't get what you had your eyes set on before the cruise, go and check with the guest services team and the shore excursions team, and they will try their best to accommodate you.
That's really helpful. Thank you both. And then just the last question to end on tonight. I think that's all we've got time for. We've got Norma, who I think we've inspired. So she'd like to know, what's the availability looking like for this journey in 2023?
23. Sorry, was that January 23?
Just 2023. She hasn't specified.
23 overall. Well, if you book for October, November 2023, you should still be okay. I mean, the first half of the year, you'll have leftovers, I think, because we're well booked. But in October, November, December, you should be able to find what you're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Thank you both so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, as always, Heather. Thank you, James. Thank you for watching. See you maybe next week. We'll be talking about Egypt.